Hello. How's everybody doing today? Thank you so much for tuning in with us for the sixth annual African American Film Series um, here on the Communities First platform. I mean, we are so excited to bring this back. We're a month behind. We usually start the thing in November, but with COVID, we had to do what Communities First does, which is respond to community needs and find out a way to adapt, improvise, and overcome for people who understand exactly what that means. But this has also allowed us as an organization with Communities First to find ways to bring you content in different ways in order to make things a little bit more accessible for people through this COVID experience. This is the sixth year. We're so used to starting the film off having, live music, food, the art galleries are open, people are experiencing all these different things before the film, and then we usually have the discussion right after. But we had to change it up, and we couldn't do it this way. However, the good thing that came out of this is that now we're able to expand the films over 3 days instead of just having it on one day. And then we're also able to bring you the discussion after more people have had time to watch it, because sometimes we pack out the Flint Institute of Arts and we won't even have space for people to come in there to see the films. So this, allows people to watch those films and come and be a part of these discussions on Saturdays. So please make sure that you sign up for the other films that we have coming up. I think the next one is Good Trouble by John Lewis, and Essence will talk more about that once she gets into there. But just to let you know a little bit more about Communities First, we are a community development organization nonprofit community development organization located in the city of Flint. We also have an office in Detroit, but we operate across the state of Michigan. And some of you, I know, are joining us from like the northern Indiana area as well. So, we have a pretty broad reach. We reach over 25,000 people through our programming of affordable housing, economic development, arts and culture outreach, and environmental education. This film series has been so important because we have been able to share so many different topics, from financial literacy to introducing people to different type of ideas or thought processes around African American films, things that people have not been able to experience before. And it's about informing, educating, inspiring, and entertaining you. And if this film series does not do that for you, then please let us know, because that's our aim, to make sure that we're meeting community needs with the things that you need. So please follow us on all social media platforms. I would be remiss if I didn't mention our sponsors. And I've learned now to make sure I keep my list with me of sponsors, because sometimes I have missed them before. So I want to make sure I don't do that. And then my list didn't come right up here. But we have HAP Empowered, Mott Community College, MTA, the Community Foundation of Greater Flint, Kettering University, Genesee Health Systems, the Flint Institute of Arts, and then also we have some other sponsors as well, the Truth and Racial Healing through the Community Foundation of Greater Flint. I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Dr. Bobby McCummala, and a few others. So thank you so much for sponsoring this film series, allowing us to bring this content to people for the next 4 months. So like I say, this is going to run from December all the way through March, and I'm very excited, or our team is very excited. So thank you to our team behind the scenes, Lori, Essence, and everyone that's been working on this to bring this to fruition. So I just want to say thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to the panel today, and I'm going to pass it off to the great Essence Wilson, our Chief Strategy Officer, which does a lot better job with this moderating. So Essence, please take it away.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you, Glenn, for that warm introduction and overview of the organization. So as Glenn said, I am Essence Wilson. I am the co-founder and chief strategy officer of Communities First, and I'm also your host for today. So thank you for joining us for this panel discussion of Willie, the first film in our African American film series. Be sure to register if you have not already seen the film. That's okay. You can still be a part of the discussion. We have put the link for that in the comments section on both Facebook and YouTube. Be sure to share this conversation. It will be very interesting and entertaining. Share is always kind of the mantra of anything having to do with social media. I would like to have sorry about that. I would like to have each of our panelists introduce themselves, and we will start with Ebyan and Laurence.
Go Ebyan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ebyan. I worked on the documentary Willy. I was the production manager as well as associate producer.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laurence. I'm the director and co-producer of Willy, the Willy film. Sorry about that.
My name is Alessandro, and I am Junior Firebirds.
And I'm his father, Dorian Jackson.
And Rico.
Hi, I'm Rico Phillips, and I have a lot of hats in the hockey, both locally and now abroad with Canada. But I think what connects me closest to this panel is I'm the 2019 NHL Willie O'Ree Community Hero Award recipient.
Awesome. And Soroya.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cory Tinker. I just graduated and played my 4 years of college at Yale University. And now I play professionally in the NWHL for the Metropolitan Riveters.
So as you can see, we have an excellent panel that is going to answer some questions for us that will enlighten us about the film and also about hockey. Sorry, we have a 2-year-old that has joined us today. All right, so we'll get started with our first question for Ebyan and Laurence. So first of all, congratulations to you on a well put together film that tells the story that many of us were unfamiliar with. So, thank you for allowing us to share that film with the community. But can you tell us how the film came about and what did you learn in the process of making it?
I think I'll answer the first part of this question, and then I'll let Ebyan maybe answer the second part. Is that okay, Ebyan? Apologies about, I think we all have children in our space right now. So actually, the reason why we started working on the film is because I used to live in Harlem, and my neighbor, Brian McBride, who's actually in the film, was the first African-American executive at the NHL. And one day I was just kind of coming home, and I ran into him, and we had a conversation about Willie O'Ree. And, I'm Canadian, and I've said that story many times, but I had never heard of Willie O'Ree growing up. And I thought that was appalling. And I thought that if I grew up in a sort of a hockey culture and didn't know about Willie O'Ree, I thought that probably many others didn't know about his amazing story. And one thing that Brian told me was that there was this effort to get Willie O'Ree in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And I was also surprised to find out that he wasn't already in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And so from that point on, I thought, well, Willie O'Ree is still alive. He's still here to tell his story. And there's an opportunity to capture this moment, because oftentimes when you want to tell the story of a hero, that person is either gone or no longer working. And as far as Willie was concerned, he was still working and still alive. And then there was this important moment unfolding. So we had this conversation, I think, on a Wednesday, and I picked up my camera and I was filming later that week at Ice Hockey in Harlem. Then I called up one of my best friend, Ebyan, to say, hey, are you on board? And so Ebyan from the get-go sort of believed in the project and jumped on board. And and it was an incredible journey. I don't know if you want to take it from there, Ebyan.
Yeah, like Laurence had mentioned, she gave me a call one Sunday night, I think, and just kind of told me about what was unfolding, and it all sounded really exciting. So of course I agreed to jump on. And in terms of just what I've learned over that time, you know, I'm also Canadian, but I have to admit I did not grow up, you know, I know how to skate. I just didn't know much about hockey. So it was kind of a front row seat into hockey, the hockey world, the NHL. So I learned so much about Willie's story and his history, and also the way the community came together to really get him to be to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and just all of the warmth and the love that was shown for Willie, and also all the time, you know, just by being with Willie out in public, people recognize him, and so I appreciate that you know, he gets the recognition after so many years of you know living outside of the hockey world. So those are some of the parts that I've learned.
And I just wanted to say one thing. When we started this process in 2018, the initial conversation that Brian and I had was that we wanted to use Willie's story to talk about sort of a bigger story. We didn't want this to just be a hockey film. We wanted to talk about sort of diversity, the importance of diversity, that racism still exists, not just in hockey, in every sports, and in the world, and that for us, it was kind of our way of speaking out. So I just wanted to say that it wasn't just about the sport. It was just an opportunity to talk about something bigger. And I think in the film, if you've had the chance to watch it, we don't just talk about hockey. We also talk about Willie's ancestors who were runaway slaves that had come to Canada. And in the story, he kind of comes full circle in understanding who he is, and maybe his heritage has had an impact on his accomplishments in hockey.
I absolutely 100% agree. The film is really well done and ties together so many different themes and provides so many insights that transcend the world of hockey. So thank you for your efforts in putting this together, and also for contributing to that larger message. And I'll just say, from my experience, I didn't grow up exposed to hockey, but as part of Communities First, we have a culture shock program. And that program is really designed to introduce people to new experiences. And that can be in the arts, that can be sports, foods, all kinds of different things. And so I do remember the first time taking my mother to a hockey game, and she was just like so enthralled. Oh, yeah, you know, she was so into it, but maybe wasn't the first sport that she would choose to watch on TV. But there's something about that live in-person experience that is really inspiring. So I'm curious to hear from Alessandro and Soraya. How did you get involved with hockey? What was your first exposure, and why do you love it?
I'll let Alessandro go first. Go for it.
You were one.
I started ice skating when I was 1 years old.
Yeah. And then keep talking.
And what else?
When did you start playing?
I started playing in, I think it was
How old were you?
2012, I think.
Yep, 2012. He started playing when he was 2 years old. Actually,
I started actually like scoring goals when I was 2 years old, and I started at 1 year old.
And what do you love about hockey?
I really don't know much about it. I don't know much.
Come on, what do you like about hockey?
I don't really know. I like every single sport. I don't know why.
Oh, that's all right. So Dorian, can you share with us how did Alessandro get involved with hockey?
Yeah, well, actually, his mother taught him how to skate when he was like he said, like 1 year old, and we were just going to the rink, and he was just skating. It wasn't even a thing of him being an ice skater. I don't ice skate. Never played hockey. I went to Carmen here in Flint, so I have a lot of friends that played hockey growing up. And we just happened to be there at the arena one day, and one of my high school friends, his son is on one of the local hockey teams here, the Junior Firebirds, and they had a really good team that year. They ended up winning, like, I think the Nationals. And when free skate was over, all the boys were about to play. So Ryan talked to me and my son, and Alessandro got to go to the locker room, and he saw all the boys getting dressed and putting on their pads and everything. And it was like, all he had ever seen before was basically like figure skating type, people just free skate. And so much like how your mother was when the game started, Alessandro, I'm sure he remembers, he was like up against the glass the entire time, like couldn't move him away. And actually, while the game was going on, coincidentally enough, I saw Rico and started talking to Rico while the game was going on. And he was telling me about, hockey in the area and how a lot of the high schools in our area didn't have teams like they did, back when I was in school. And, it's a really good sport to get into, and you can actually start playing at a really early age. Because like I said, I had no idea when people even started playing hockey. It seems like such a complicated sport. I played soccer in high school, college and stuff like that. But as far as hockey, I had no idea. Like I said, I just had friends who played, no idea when they started. All I knew was they could play. And so in talking with, Rico, he started telling me about some other programs and some teams and everything like that. And it actually was when, even though my son is so young, when I was talking to Rico, this was around the time he was starting his program, really getting it into full swing. So Alessandro, unfortunately, didn't have an opportunity to get into that program. We went and he tried out for the Ice Raiders?
Yeah, Ice Raiders.
Yeah, it was the Flint Ice Raiders. And I didn't know at the time, and I don't even think Rico knew at the time when he saw him skating and stuff, that he was actually too young to even play cross ice with the Ice Raiders. But because he had a real good tryout, because he skated so well, even being so young, they let him play. I had to sign like a waiver. And yeah, they made me sign like an insurance waiver. And he started playing, and he's been playing pretty much ever since, going to camp. He's played on a couple different travel teams, got to play at Piranhas. And
it sounds like even at 9 years old, he's already accomplished a lot in the world of hockey and his exposure. Soraya, can you tell us a little bit about your story as a Yale hockey player and a professional hockey player?
Yeah, so I'm Canadian as well. I grew up just outside of Toronto, and my dad grew up in Scarborough. My dad grew up playing in Scarborough, just not at a high level or anything like that, but my dad just loved the game. But unfortunately, he experienced a lot of racism in the sport. So when it came time to put his kids in sport, I had done gymnastics and dance and was told I was going to be too big for that. So my dad chose to put me in hockey and be a big defenseman. So been playing ever since then. So I've been playing around since I was 5 or 6. I've been playing, but that's led me to so many opportunities and so many blessings really that have come along in my path. I would say my most memorable, I was on the U18 Canadian national team. I have a silver medal, unfortunately lost in overtime to the US in 2016. But again, to put on the Canadian jersey was awesome. And then that obviously led me to receiving my, Ivy League schools don't give sports scholarships, but I was able to receive financial aid from Yale University and play at the college level. So I just graduated in May, finished my 4 years, and then was just drafted in April to play professionally. I was drafted 4th overall by the Metropolitan Riveters, and will be playing in our Lake Placid Bubble Series come January.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome. What a beautiful story.
Thank you.
Yeah. And one of the
you're muted.
One of the things that I'm hearing from all of you is, that early exposure was really important, and then having the family support to actually move forward in the sport. So Rico, I think you were a bit modest in talking about your involvement in hockey. You started about 10 or 11 years ago. You started the Flint Inner City Youth Hockey Program. And can you tell us about meeting Willie O'Ree and how it came about that you won the award?
Absolutely, and thank you again for having me a part of this panel. It means a whole lot to me, not just because of an opportunity to talk about Willie story. But to know Willie personally, I can tell you he's an incredible man. I never imagined meeting him in person the way I did. So I'll try to be as brief as I can with my story, but I want to start back. I did not start playing hockey as a youngster, as a little one. I started in high school. I was an athletic trainer, student athletic trainer, and I was assigned to the hockey team. And I didn't know very much about hockey. I'd seen a couple games here and there. I hate to admit this, but this was in the 80s, mid 80s. I don't hate to admit it. Heck, I was alive. But anyways, it was the mid 80s, and there wasn't the exposure to the sport. So anyways, I got on board, and I see my first game at ice level, and I was hooked, completely hooked at that moment. And I got some ice skates, and the coach of the team allowed me to learn how to skate, which I did not learn much. But by the time I was a senior, I actually took a leap of faith and become an on-ice referee or official. And keep in mind, I could not stop yet. So the skaters that I was refereeing were little guys, and they younger than Leaks, and they were laughing at me. But I got to tell you, that wasn't the only thing that stuck out. My inability to skate is also my color stuck out, and it wasn't long. It was like within the first 2 months, I blew a call, which happens a lot with new officials, anyways. But I was called over to the bench, and the assistant coach called me the N-word and told me he threatened me with violence. And at that moment, I thought I was going to leave the sport and never return. I was beside myself. Fortunately, I had a senior partner with me who was experienced and took care of the coach. And then when I was taking my stuff off, he could tell I was dejected. And he told me that was the day I needed to grow up, that there were going to be people in this world that were going to try to marginalize me based on my race. He didn't say in those terms, but that's in essence what he said. And he said, you're either going to stand up against folks like that and use your mind and whatever you have, your other resources to combat that. Like the simple fact was, I had the authority to throw them out of the game myself, but because I was 17 years old and never been called that name in that way, I didn't know what to do. Long story a little shorter, 10 years of ice skate, a referee, and I stayed in the sport. I started playing adult league, and I got to tell you, it wasn't the only time I was racial slurs weren't hurled at me, just not so directly. But in 10 to 12 years of me refereeing ice hockey, I was in countless rinks and did numbers of games, and I never seen another person of color in the rink with me. And that was not just a lonely feeling; it was a feeling like like everyone that I seen looked exactly the same socioeconomically. They're all suburban kids and people. And I thought to myself, there's something wrong with this picture. It shouldn't be not just Black people of all walks should be able to enjoy this great sport. So I popped in my mind that I wanted to do something about it. And the only thing I could think of is, man, I'd love to have a camp or a program for kids in the city to experience this free. And this is 1998. And I looked up, the NHL had just launched the Cultural Diversity Task Force Initiative, and Bryant McBride, that was one of his roles, so I wanted to bring him up. And that's the first time I learned of Willie O'Ree. Now, I want you to know something. I had to go to the library to get a book on Willie O'Ree because we didn't have the internet then. I know that sounds old, but I was so interested in who this man was. 10 or 12 years go down the road, and I finally had the means to launch the Flint Inner City Youth Hockey Program here in Flint, Michigan. And it's aimed at, for kids between the ages of 8 and 11, boys and girls. We no limits as long as they live in our city, because we don't have ice hockey in our city. We have an OHL team here, but there's other than that, it's very limited within the city of Flint. And so at this point, we put probably close to 200 kids through our program, but we still struggle to bring kids to the sport because it's just so removed from the sport. So, in essence, after this, I want to talk to you about culture shock opportunities with our program. So I was trying to get more brighten our program. How can I get more people? Because I was struggling to get kids to pay attention. And I thought if I brought someone like Willie O'Ree to Flint, the living legend himself, that's going to tie into another section of our community that maybe looks at him from a historic or pioneering standpoint. And so I don't know how I did it, you guys, but I asked for Willie O'Ree, and Willie O'Ree shows up in Flint, Michigan to our program. And he came in, was a part of it. I got to spend what I call special time with Willie because we sat down and fellowshiped, and he told me of his stories and gave me his wisdom. And as he was leaving, the day after he left, my wife had heard about the Willie O'Ree Community Hero Award. And so she went online that morning and she's checking it out. And she said, "Oh my gosh, this is Rico. Who can I get to write this for Rico?" And it was the last day of nominations. So she went out on a limb and she nominated me. And it was incredible. So once you're nominated, Willie actually selects the finalists, the three finalists. And of the three, the way it works is it was public voting that selected the winner. So it was all online. And I will tell you that I did not express that I'm now currently a retired Flint firefighter, and I taught fire safety for a majority of my career. And so as that section of my community combined with my hockey community that helped put me in a position where I was actually able to win the Willie O'Ree Community Hero Award. I do have it here so that you can see this is not set on a mantle yet, and I'll explain why in just a moment.
That's great. Congratulations again. So Laurence and Ebyan, just thinking about, again, having spent some time with Willie and with his friends, how would you describe him?
I'll take the first part of this question, and maybe Ebyan, you can express how you feel about it. I always think of the first moment I met Willie. It so happened it was shortly after Brian and I had this conversation, and I was out in San Diego where he currently lives for another shoot. And I thought it would be a good opportunity to meet him if he was interested in meeting me. What Brian had told me is that over the years, many people had wanted to do films about Willie O'Ree, and it had never really materialized. And not that he felt like he couldn't trust anybody, but maybe it's like he felt like his story had never been told properly. And so I wanted to meet him and tell him that I felt there was an opportunity and I wanted him to trust me, and that my goal was to honor him 100%. And so we met for Mexican food in San Diego, which sounds really cliche, and his wife Adele was there. And I had just like an incredible time. I always say that you when you meet someone that's like a legend, you feel it. And he just had this aura about him. He was just kind of quiet and easygoing. But then, he shared his story with me, and we just had like a great time. And I left thinking that, even more, I wanted to honor him. That the fact that so many people didn't know his incredible story, that he had broken the color barrier in the mid 50s. And here we are in San Diego having Mexican food, to me felt like a huge honor and a privilege. And from that point on, I felt that like I had gained his trust, and the NHL also helped us, opening some doors, but it just became like an incredible honor. And everywhere Willie went, I just felt so lucky to be there with him and the team. And, I think several times in making the film, I got emotional with him when he got the phone call. We were all crying. And so it was just like an incredible journey and a huge privilege. And I always say that working with Willie is one of the best experiences in my life.
And I'll say one of my favorite moments of the film was sitting there waiting with the family, right? And waiting for the call to come, and the phone rings. So everybody's all excited. You can feel the tension. You did a fabulous job with the soundtrack and feeding in this anticipatory music. And then it was like a family friend on the phone.
Oh, yeah.
I got the
attention. We didn't have to build it. We actually thought he wasn't getting the calls. And spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen it. We need to know he gets the call, but the tension is real. We didn't really build it up. But Ebyan, I wanted to leave space for you to speak as well. So take it away.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add to that, but I think the first time I met Willie was in New York City. Laurence and I were filming just some kind of, I would say, just natural scenes of him watching a game close to Madison Square Garden, and yeah, at the bar. And so he's just so hospitable. You know, when I came there and as a member of the crew, thinking like, okay, I'm going to be responsible to make sure he's comfortable and whatnot, and he was the one making me comfortable. So he's just incredibly humble, just very kind man. And, you know, just by being at certain events with him throughout the duration of us filming, as well as after, during, for example, you know, certain film festivals that the film was in, you see how people are just gravitate towards him. And every single time he's incredibly touched by that interaction. So he's just, you know, genuine, just nice person, and also happens to be
just to add
a legend.
to Ebyan's story, we actually have a funny anecdote. But that first time Ebyan met Willie, we wanted to shoot this scene at a bar where he was like watching a Bruins games because they were in the playoffs. And so we were like, all right, we'll show up like kind of early. You know, he's like in his 80s. Like, we don't want to like ruffle him. So we show up there at like 3 p.m. We start filming. Come 5 p.m., I was like, all right, well, you know, like, I'm going to go. We're done. And Ebyan's like, yeah, I'm just going to hang out with Willie a little bit. And then I get a text at like 8 p.m. from Ebyan being like, we're still here. Like, really, you know, Willie was buying rounds for like people at the bar. So I was like, wow, man, like Willie is the youngest 85-year-old I have ever met. Like, he was just keeping it going. So it was just like a funny memory of him in a good way,
You certainly got the feeling that he is really just an amazing person to know, really warm, genuine, kind-hearted. And it was nice to get that feeling of just like, this was like your adopted uncle who doesn't know who you are, right? You know, there's just this camaraderie and feeling that you get from watching.
Completely, you know, and he just, as Ebyan said, like, does a really good job at like, and I think, you know, Brian speaks of this in the film, but sort of the, sort of a muscle to fight back like prejudice is that like he's been around a lot of hatred at many points in his career, and so he knows how to diffuse and be smarter and educate people in other ways, and there's just this aura about him that he carries everywhere, so he's wonderful in that sense.
So I'll ask Alessandro, can you tell us what position you play? And what are you responsible for on the rink, on the ice?
I play defense, and I just protect the goalie and just push the puck up. And mostly, I go up behind the goalie and score a goal.
Do you have a favorite moment on the ice or a favorite goal that you've made that you'd like to share?
I have. But it was, I guess, when I was 3 years old, and I made 8 goals in a row one time.
That's pretty awesome.
Very impressive.
So I'd like to talk about just some of the barriers and some of the disconnect in particularly urban communities for people when they're thinking about hockey. So maybe, and this is for anyone who would like to share, what are some of the barriers or roadblocks to playing hockey?
Yeah, I guess I can start. So I would say I grew up in a lower income family, and it becomes known that hockey is a very expensive sport. So I think the two main things that come to my mind are the expense and representation. So with it being so expensive, it's so hard to get representation in communities of color, just because most communities of colors are marginalized and don't have that same opportunity. So I know for me, a huge part of that was affordability. Being able to afford all the equipment. Skates are so expensive, sticks are expensive. And to be honest, I never had a new pair of skates until I got to Yale. Just because that's just how I grew up. I remember I made Team Canada, and somebody called my dad and was like, you need to buy her a new pair of skates. Like, she's a national team player now, but I just kind of made do my whole career in terms of the affordability piece. But I also understand that so many people don't even have the opportunity to step in and have their parents pay for that for them. And I was blessed enough to have that. And then also the representation piece. Obviously, there's not a lot of people of color that play hockey and are at the top level. It's very, very low percentage in the NHL. I think it's somewhere between 3 and 5% are players of color right now. And with that, it's just hard for younger players to be able to see themselves in those positions of power and positions of success within the sport. We see a lot of basketball players, we see soccer players, whatever other sport, but obviously we don't see a lot of representation for the Black community within hockey. So I think for moving forward, it's important for those people of color who do play to reach back into their communities and show these players of color that it's possible for them to play and reach that level that they want to be at.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I think, part of our goal through our culture shock program is that kind of exposure. And we notice the same thing when we take families to the symphony. There's not representation in the audience and there's not representation on the stage. And so how do you encourage, particularly a young person, to pursue a career in the arts or in certain sports when they don't necessarily see themselves? So I'm really grateful to all of you for both Laurence and Ebyan for telling the story, but then also for those of you who play the sport, advocate for the sport, and work to promote diversity. So it looks like, Dorian, you wanted to maybe say something about the question about what are the barriers?
Yeah, I mean, the actual major barrier Soraya talked about was, of course, the cost. I mean, the cost for it is just astronomical. My daughter, she played travel soccer all the way through high school, and people used to tease me and talk about how expensive that was, but that's nowhere near the cost of playing hockey. Just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm hoping that he gets to play again in his league because they're off right now because of COVID. But I just spent probably close to $400 on skates and pads because he outgrew them. And the way he's growing, he might outgrow the skates before he actually even gets to skate in them. But the cost is really, really crazy for hockey. The fact too, in a lot of urban communities and cities, I mean, they may have 1 rink, 2 rinks at the most. So ice time is at a premium, which is really expensive. And another thing too, I don't know if it's so much in Canada as it is in the United States, but the actual season that hockey is played falls around the exact same time as basketball. So a lot of the top athletes who might even want to, play hockey or learn hockey, it's the exact same time as basketball is in America. And we already know how huge that is, especially with our community. So it's just not something that is available. I don't think it's one of those things that, like you hear growing up where people say, well, Black people just don't play hockey, as if to say we can't. I don't think that's the situation with people of color in hockey. It's just that there's other things that are going on that's already been more established, even more well paid. You make a lot more money being a professional basketball player than you do a hockey player. And just because of that, notoriety, TV contracts, etc., I think most of our people gravitate towards those, what they call like cash sports. But programs like Rico's are fantastic. Alessandro has boys on his team right now who actually came through Rico's program and have, worked their way up through the ranks and are now playing travel hockey, which is awesome. It's really cool to see. It's really cool to see, when they start playing with Alessandro and I see them with their Flint City jerseys on, that Rico gives the boys, and you just see them around the rinks and stuff now. And I mean, you can really tell the difference within the past 3 or 4 years, how much his program has made a difference.
Yeah. You said something really important about hockey season being at the same time as basketball season, and thinking about what Soraya said about accessibility. The cost of playing basketball is, a pair of shoes and a basketball and then going off to the community hoop, right? Versus the cost that you guys are talking about, for playing hockey and the ice time and getting to the rink and, the difference in kind of the skill. You don't really just you can pick it up, right? But, very different than just, trying to get the ball in the hoop, right? So there's some just fundamental differences in how the sports are learned and the accessibility to equipment and things like that. So I'm curious to hear from Rico and Soraya. Both of you, again, have been modest, but your efforts to improve diversity in the sport. So Rico, if you could talk about your efforts in the OHL, and then Soraya, you have a program that I read about a little bit online. So if you could share that with us as well.
All right. So yeah, I've been able to evolve since winning the Willie O'Ree award. Prior to that, I had, I was definitely, a face within the hockey community. But my role as a firefighter, I couldn't see myself being anything other than that. But once I won the award, and I came to Flint, back to Flint from Vegas, and I seen, up to 5 billboards, electronic billboards congratulating me. And everywhere I went, it was just overwhelming. I can't thank the people of our community enough for that. But what it did is it shined this light on this opportunity to do more. I almost reinvent myself and have a second calling, which is very rare. So those of you that are either on this panel or watching, I'm living proof that you can reinvent yourself or find second callings in life. I'm very fortunate for that. So with that said, back in early this year, George Floyd was killed. Everyone understands what happened, and it's everybody across the land wanted to figure out what we can do to make a change. And I was one of those people. And ironically, this is strictly ironic, but for the purpose of this call or this discussion, I called Willie O'Ree and I said, Willie, I asked him how he's doing. COVID was happening, and I told him I was struggling with what was going on in our nation. And he said, I want to say something. I just don't know how. Should I join Black Lives Matter movement here locally? What should I do, Willie? And he said, Rico, he says, your voice is being heard in hockey and people are listening. So let your voice be heard. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like everybody that's met Willie understands this guy is loaded with wisdom. And I took it right from there and it inspired me. I emailed the commissioner of the Ontario Hockey League and told him I was interested in helping the OHL because we have a team here in Flint with diversity and inclusion. Several phone calls later led to the creation and appointment to the Director of Cultural Diversity and Inclusion for the Ontario Hockey League, which is huge. This league is a very important league. Maybe we don't understand that here in this, this side of the border, but in Ontario, it's in all of Canada, because it's part of the Canadian Hockey League. It's a big, big deal that I was appointed. So in that process, what I've been doing is talking with recent players of the Ontario Hockey League, BIPOC players, people of color, Black players, Asian, Indigenous, to find out what their experience was, when they played in the league from a cultural standpoint. And my eyes were open. And one of the things that my eyes were open to is that virtually all of them described that the first time they'd heard a racial slur or taunt was between the ages of 8 and 11 years old at an ice rink, not at school, not at a playground, at an ice rink. And that really disturbed me. So I've been on a mission. Also, in the meantime, I was selected and appointed to the advisory board for the Hockey Diversity Alliance. And these are a group of Black NHL hockey players that decided that they wanted to help make a change in this world as well. So I've got my hands in a couple different irons, but it's all on the same, with the same theme. And so what I've been doing is going all across anybody that will listen to me. I've been speaking to groups all across Ontario, but here in the US, it's been a little bit more limited about what diversity and inclusion actually means. That diversity, of course, means that we all get a chance to eat the food, but inclusion means we all get to sit at the same table and eat the food together, and not you wonder what I'm eating and I wonder what you're eating. Because it's very important to express that, because typically I'm talking to a group of white men that are middle-aged or older, and inclusion to them means push away or get out of the way so people of color can step into your spot. And it is not necessarily that. And that's what my challenge has been, is coming from not just diversifying the sport down here on the grassroots level, which is what our program is helping do. Thanks, Dorian, for that feedback, because it's so important to hear that you're seeing the faces from our program now playing in the sport. But also moving it all the way up so Roy or Leaks, when he becomes a he gets into a space that they can look up and say, I can aspire to be that person, right? So right now in the Ontario Hockey League, the players are the only place that there's diversity. Above that, all the people above them, there's no one diverse. There's no diversity. So we have to work on it from all angles in order so we can all have a better place.
If I could say something really quickly, Rico, first of all, congratulations for all your amazing accomplishments. It's amazing to hear all this. I do want to say that also one of the reasons I wanted to make the film is it's not just up to people of color to fight for their space at the table. It's up to white people, me including, to be a real ally and not just like, I have a Black friend I like. And I think in the film, we want to be candid about that, and we wanted to show that there's different kinds of allyship, and it's not for nothing that we show Willie's friends in Fredericton who are like older white people, and traditionally, especially in the U.S., people are not used to seeing older biracial friendships. It's more unusual. And when we showed the film in South Carolina, where Willie's ancestors are from, to a majority African American audience, a lot of the feedback was that it felt a little bit like healing to watch this film, where they were like, Willie's best friend, Junior, just speaks candidly about racism. So does David, his other old white friend. And we were hoping that, white audiences would also watch this with a critical eye and see that allyship can be a lot more. And everyone has to get to work. I want to say one last thing because I don't want to take too much space, but the problem in hockey and what you said, Rico, about people yelling racial slurs at hockey games, it's not just a person yelling, it's everyone else who's quiet. And I was like, when you're quiet, you're part of the problem. And for everything you hear in the news, every racial slur, everything you hear in the news, a thousand stories you never hear about. George Larac, who's a friend of mine, told me like, no one knows about his story, but how many times he had to just like block his ears to everything he heard. That was awful. And so it's up to everybody to call others out, and all of our white friends watching, you're part of the solution. So anyways, that's what I wanted to add.
And I believe that's a very excellent point. And I think like when I've been taking calls from moms whose sons have been a racial slur has been hurled at them. I mean, these are young kids. This is a mom in Saginaw that contacted me. I had a mom in Kitchener, Ontario contact me. I'm working with these families to help them understand, first of all, how to cope, but also how to reach out to the fellow hockey parents and what to do to be more engaging and more proactive, like positive reinforcement and messages within the rinks about we're not going to tolerate these kind of actions and this type of language, hate speech and stuff. But it's a lot of work to do, but I agree with you. And before we end this call, I want to be able to share with that allyship. I have some websites that I want to share with people so they understand that after this call, this doesn't end here. You can look at different ways, different groups that are helping in this cause, and you can be a part of it.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think, Laurence, you provided some really good thoughts around how people can be good allies, right? And you're using the medium and the passion that you have for filmmaking to do that. And I greatly appreciate that. There were a number of times in the film where on its own, there were points that were made that you would go, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. But in the context of the story, it still provided like the historical context, but in very powerful moments, but in a positive way. And I think that takes a lot of skill for you and your team and Ebyan to make that happen. I'll just give a quick example. Talking about when Willie was making the trip to the United States I can't remember exactly where he was headed, but talking about how when he was in Canada, he could sit anywhere on the bus. But as he headed south, he had to move towards the back of the bus, and just kind of those nuances in history that I've never thought about the differences between being Black in Canada and being Black in the US in the time of the civil rights movement in the 50s and the 60s. Never would have crossed my mind. But to tell that part of the story, I think was really helpful, just so that we can all understand our collective history a little bit better. So thank you for adding those pieces in.
And if I can say something, that's a great example. And our editor, Rosella Terzi, said it right. Canada is not a place where there's no racism. So that's important to say. Like, there's a lot of issues in terms of systemic racism, especially when it comes to Native people. And also there's a difference between discrimination, ignorance, and segregation. So the difference that Willie experienced really had to do with systemic racism in Jim Crow America, which didn't really exist in Canada, but there was other forms of racism, of course. But there was an opportunity in the film to say, well, at least Willie was allowed to play on the hockey team in the 50s. And these are important historical points to make. But I do want to say that Canada also has a lot of work to do, and we didn't want to paint like a rosy picture either. Sorry about the baby crying, so I'm going to go on mute.
Thank you. And then Soraya, if you could tell us about your program, and then also if you want to piggyback on what Laurence was talking about what it's like being Black in Canada.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess I'll go back and kind of tell a bit of my story. So obviously I'm Canadian and grew up playing hockey in Canada, but I tell a lot of people that most of my most memorable racial discrimination moments happened in Canada. I remember being called the N-word by my own teammate when I was around 12. And that was in Canada. So I think I've experienced it from both sides, from being in the States and also being Canadian. But also just going back to the representation part. For me, being a woman of color and playing hockey, I felt like I never had that person to go to at the rink. I always felt very alone. And I never played with another player of color until my senior year at Yale. And if I'm being completely honest, I feel like I loved the sport. After I was done with the national team, was super excited to attend Yale. But upon arriving at Yale, I found that my teammates weren't very nice. They weren't very kind towards me. They were very exclusive. And I wasn't sure if it was because I came from a low income house and they were very rich white women, or if it was because I was Black. I wasn't sure. So I kind of had trouble navigating that while I was at Yale. But ultimately, throughout my 4 years, I really began to hate the sport. I found that walking into the doors every day of the rink, it was just a job. I'd walk in with my headphones on, hop on for practice, get my lift in, and leave. And I would talk to very few people. I just felt very alone, and it led me to hate the sport. So upon graduation, I really, if I'm being honest, I didn't want to play pro. I wanted to be done with the sport. I didn't want to walk into the rink anymore. And I just figured that my career was done and I didn't want it. But through that, I have a 10-year-old brother, and I realized that it's so important for him to have people to represent for him, and so that he can see people in that position. So for me, I think that I decided to continue my career, not even for myself, but for the girls behind me. I think that I definitely still have trouble walking into the rink. I leave January 4th to go to New Jersey to play with my team, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous. Just to interact with my new teammates and see how that's going to go, and see who's accepting, and be able to find my allies on my team. So moving forward into my professional career, and I kind of being given that platform by the NWHL, I decided to reach out and to start my own mentorship program. So I mentor girls from, I think the youngest I have is 10 right now, up until 16 or 17, getting ready to go to college. So I know for me, I had no idea what the recruiting process was like. My parents had no idea. I didn't know who to contact when people were contacting me, I didn't necessarily know what to say or what to do. But obviously I had people who helped me along my path, and that led me to Yale, which is obviously a huge blessing to have that degree and be able to go to a school like that as a low income student and as a Black woman, really. So I decided to start my mentorship program, and with that, it's whether it's life advice, hockey specific advice. I really just enjoy interacting with the young ladies that reach out and contact me to join the program, and I'm really excited to move forward with it, just because I recognize that I can be that leader and be that trailblazer on the women's side, and help those girls behind me.
Awesome. Sorry, I just want to say you're awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the ticker went across the screen. If you have not seen the movie yet, the registration link is also in the comments. Please, please, please go and see it. We are so grateful that we were able to have the film and to be able to share that with the community. We also want to make sure that we can give away some prizes. So I'm going to just put up 3 trivia questions. These will also go in the comments. If you respond back with all 3 correct answers, then you will be entered into a drawing to win a $25 prize. Also, if there are any questions for the panelists, whoever asks a question will also be entered into a drawing to win a prize. So we want to make sure that we have some questions from the public as well. So we're going to pop those questions up. I think somebody said they love watching hockey. Okay. So there was a question. There are the questions. The 3 questions are: how old was Willie when he first started skating? Second question is: what team did Willie play for in the NHL? And the third question is: what injury did Willie sustain that should have prevented him from playing the hockey? And those questions will go in the trivia section. So if you answer those 3 questions correctly, you have an opportunity to win a $25 gift card.
Oh, no, it's for them.
Well, he can enter as well. He just has to put them in the comments on Facebook or YouTube.
I initially thought that was a question from somebody watching. I was like, wow, this person is sitting there making trivia questions for us.
Questions for the public.
Gotcha.
I think I saw Alessandro showing off his jersey. Looks great. Awesome. Glad that you have those. So we have a couple of folks that have put things in the comments. So somebody has some love for Alessandro. Do you guys know who that is?
No.
Oh, we couldn't hear you.
Mom.
Oh, so sweet. Your mom is watching. That's amazing. Awesome. Let's see.
Thank you for sharing your honesty.
Yep. And then somebody said, thank you for honestly sharing your experience. So thank you for that.
Hey, Essence, I did want to say something. You just mentioned Alessandro's jersey, and one of the kind of crazy things is that when he started playing, me being, of course, African American and him playing, I wanted to try to eliminate some of those, barriers and just get him kind of comfortable with the sport. So his mother is Ukrainian, and as you know, there's a ton of Ukrainian, Russian players. So we always try to get him like a lot of the Russian player jerseys, Ovechkin, Datsuk, and all of those. And I always made a point to get him. Like he has a Willie O'Ree, he has a Wayne Simmons, he has like pretty much all Kane. I mean, a ton of jerseys of the African American players. And the crazy thing is, in the kid size jerseys, and Rico, maybe this is something that you can talk to the NHL about one day or something like that. You cannot. It's very, very hard to find any of the Black players in NHL jerseys for kids, including Willie O'Ree. Willie O'Ree jersey wasn't even an option. I actually had to buy a Bruins jersey and just take it to a place in the mall to have him put the name and number on it when I found out that, he was the person who broke the color barrier in the sport. So, because of that, they'll have the opportunity to, have those people until, like you can with a LeBron jersey or something like that, and grow up seeing it. So that to me was actually shocking compared to other sports that I played in.
That is a very valid point. It sounds like something that we need to change for sure. You should be able to get a Willie O'Ree jersey. Why not? Right?
Rico, we'll write to Kim Davis about this.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I got it written down right here. Don't think I don't. I completely agree because for the, there's hockey heroes for everyone, and it should be. We say hockey is for everyone. There should be a way to represent that too. I've been fortunate enough to meet the players from the HDA, and they're some of the most visible Black hockey players or players of color in the league. And they tell me of the struggle within themselves for their branding, and how it becomes. I mean, who do you share that brand to get more people of color to even think about wearing their jerseys? Because our jerseys are different than most jerseys. If you're not familiar with hockey, they're long sleeve, and so they definitely stand out as a particular style of jersey. So I wrote that down. Don't worry. If I might, for those of you that are watching, I want to give we talked about allyship. I want to give you 4 websites that you can go to so that you have a way to help us help make this movement happen. I will say this, first of all, I know this is pie in the sky, but my imagination takes me this way with inclusion, that when you take a sport that's predominantly white like hockey, and if we're able to create the level of inclusion that's necessary to eradicate half of the problems in the next 5, 10, 20 years, then we can be an example, a reflection of what society can do. I really believe that, and I know it seems like a lofty idea, but I really believe this is where we can go. Should I say what these websites are, or should I put them in the chat? What's the best way, Essence, in your opinion?
If you put them in the chat, then we can post them on Facebook and YouTube, so people can access them.
All right, I'm going to put them in the chat, but I'm going to describe them real quick for those of you that were listening. First one is nhl.com/community/committing-to-change. It's their Committing to Change website, and this is where you can get your most information about how to become an ally. It teaches, or it gives you key terms that are happening in diversity right now, gives you resources like movies, books, short movies, so that, like, there's one that's on systemic racism explained, those types of things to help you have the toolbox to understand what this is all about. Why are we having this movement, and how do I fit into this? The second one is the hockeydiversityalliance.org, and that's the organization that I talked about with the professional hockey players. We're making strides and movements. In the near future, you'll see more and more, but go there, and that's one way for alliance. Blackgirlhockeyclub.org. This is an organization that is really making strides right now. They're trying to this isn't just for Black girls that play hockey. This is a group of women that look at hockey. They're hockey fans. They love the sport, and they are trying to intertwine on so many levels this diversity inclusion. And I can't help but say I appreciate them. Another one that's besides, I know this is crazy. I'm taking my shirt off, my pullover off, but I'm wearing our shirt that represents Players Against Hate today. And they have an anti-racism and hockey movement. And their website is playersagainst-hate.org. And on this site, you can see where moms and parents that have children that have been the victims of racism or racism, but particularly hate speech and instances in the ice rink or around hockey that happen. This is a resource where you can they have a victim hotline now that just came up, and there's other resources for you to help so that you will have a voice in your ice rinks, in your facilities, and the places that you call hockey. Okay, I'll get you a shirt. So if you want to get a shirt like this one, you go to playersagainst-hate.org, and that's one of their fundraisers. And then, of course, if you want to know more about the Flint Intercity Youth Hockey Program, you can go to flintintercityyouthhockey.org, and that's our website. So I'm going to put all these on while we're waiting for anything else that might come.
All right. We will make sure that all of those links get sent on social media so that people can take a look at those later. So as we conclude our time together, I want to offer Ebyan and Laurence the chance to express to us why it's important to tell stories like Willie's, and then I'll prep the rest of you and just say, if you could offer when your turn comes, final remarks, what do you hope changes? What do you hope that people get out of this conversation and viewing the film?
Ebyan, go first because I've been talking a lot.
Yeah, it's important to tell stories like Willie's because I think, it connects a lot of people's experiences, so by listening or watching the film or listening to his story, people like, Soraya can understand, I went through that as well, and also can find inspiration and also the resilience. And I'm hesitant to use that term, but, because it's not your job to do that. But at the same time, to move forward, you can take inspiration from stories like Willie's. So I think it's really important to place those stories in the forefront. And Soraya is also going ahead and doing something else that's kind of like piggybacking off of that. And that will just continue to elevate not just the sport, but people's exposure. And just, it's also life skills that you're learning, right? Like Willie, he's providing the kids that he works with, the people he works with just general life skills and being a better person and contributing to society. So, and it's just really nice to watch a heartfelt, positive story. So I think those things are important for us to know that like there's good out there, despite us, especially in the last year we've had with just all the news and everything. It's inspiring and also kind of tips the scale and understanding that there's good out there in the world.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. Everything that being said.
Great. Well, thank you both for being involved and for making this film. It was a fantastic opportunity for us to have this conversation, but then also to learn so much more about hockey, about diversity, and about things that are happening right in our own community. I think that, on first thought, when we said we had to go virtual, we thought that might be limiting, but actually it's expanded the opportunity to have you both with us, to have Rico with us, Soraya and Alessandro, and then also for the information to continue on because it will be available on social media. So in times past, we would have these great discussions and then we would go, oh, we wish we would tape it. We always would forget to tape it, but now we have it and we can re-show it and reshare as well. So we'll have Alessandro and Dorian, what would you like to share with us either about the film or just some parting words for those that are listening?
I want other kids to play hockey. And you? I don't know.
Basically the same thing. I mean, it's actually a really, really cool sport. Like I said, I still don't know how to skate. I would love to learn. I'm getting a little bit up in age, but it is a really, really cool sport. It's fast. There's contact, scoring goals. It's pretty exciting. So hopefully people will, start to gravitate towards it. There's some really, really good players, even though there's not a lot in the league right now that are African-American and Canadian, Black Canadian as well. So it's a really, really cool sport. It's definitely to get into.
And I appreciate what Alessandro said because he kept it really simple. I want kids to play hockey. That is awesome. And then Soraya, what would you like us to take away from today's conversation?
Yeah, I think that the main thing that I would say for Black individuals and other people of color is to not be afraid to play hockey. There are groups, there are people who are willing to support you and people who want to see you in the game. So just know that everybody who has already made their way up through the sport, we want to see people of color play the sport and be welcomed in the game. And then I would say for our white counterparts, I would say learn how to be an ally, learn how to be anti-racist, and learn how to call your teammates out, call the coaches out, and be comfortable being uncomfortable in those spaces. Just because us as Black individuals in the rink, it's hard to step into every day. And I really think that if white people made an effort to make us feel comfortable in the rink, we can really make a difference in the sport and kind of bring the game to a whole nother level, I think. So
That's what I've got.
And that
Thank you
invitation
so
stands in every area of our lives, right? It transcends hockey, for allies to show up and take some of the burden that that we have to face on a day-to-day basis in dealing with discrimination, racism, and prejudice is certainly appreciated, right? So Rico, what would you share with us as we prepare to end our conversation?
Well, I think everyone said exactly my thoughts together. I know that seemed like a simple reply because most people know I can give you a long reply. But the bottom line is this, is that for those of us that are like myself, Soraya and these two awesome filmmakers, I mean, that movie means so much to me. Thank you, ladies. It really means a lot to me. I got to be honest with you about the movie. I already knew the outcome, and I was still excited and couldn't wait to see what was going to happen. So you did an awesome job, and enough can't be said about Willie O'Ree. He's a living legend, and we're so fortunate, those of us that have met him, but those of us that play the sport to have had Willie be an incredible ambassador for our sport. But in the trenches are people like me that are trying to make a difference in our sport and across the land, because we know that what happens in our sport will transcend into real life. And so all I can say is that we're going to continue to work towards that inclusion, and we want everyone to enjoy the sport, whether you're a player or a fan or just curious about what the sport's all about. Please join us, because it's something that the level of passion that's involved with hockey is like none other. And I guess I'll leave it with that.
And remember, not all of us are going to be hockey players, but you can certainly watch the sport. So I think representation also matters in the audience. We're fortunate in Flint to have a team here that we could go and watch, under normal circumstances, a normal season. The tickets aren't very expensive. You can connect with our organization. We often have tickets available for free. And it's a low threshold. You go, you try it, you may love it, you may hate it, but most likely you're going to love it. It is really intense, fiercely competitive. And although there's ice, it's actually not very cold. So I encourage you to at least give it a shot, try it out. If you've got a young person who is interested at all, get them involved in hockey. But that also goes to all those other spaces where we may not see ourselves represented, but there's an interest. Go for it. Try it out. Again, you may love it, you may hate it, but at least you tried it and you know the answer to that. Thank you for participating. Oh, Laurence, you have something else?
All I want to say is before we conclude, I want to thank you all for being part of this. It was really an honor to be in this panel with all of you, and your stories are all very inspiring. So thank you, all of you. I love you.
And I know I don't want to necessarily get the last word, but if you do have a youngster from Flint between ages 8 and 11, our program begins the end of January. And it's FlintInterCityYouthHockey.org. We also have a Facebook page. Please reach out to me. And we're hoping that we'll have a season that has a lot to do with whether the OHL is actually going to have a season or not. So, but regardless of that, we also have a floor hockey program at the Sylvester Broom Empowerment Village that we've started. So please visit our website if you have any interest in your youngster starting this sport. It's going to be free. So can't beat that.
Awesome. Be sure to check out the link that are in the comment section. There's some good stuff there that both Rico shared. I believe Soraya shared her website. So hey, we can continue to support her now that we know who she is and we're in her corner and rooting for her. Want to thank you again to the panelists for being present. This has been a fantastic time of learning, and I think learning not only about Willie and about the film, but there's just so much more. And I think we could continue this conversation probably all day. But we do want to thank our sponsors, My Community College, the Community Foundation of Greater Flint, Kettering University, HAP, Genesee Health System, Mass Transportation Authority, the Flint Institute of Art, and MCACA. We also would like to share our next film, which is coming up in January. We are going to be showing John Lewis, Good Trouble, from January 21st to January 24th. And that is also available at the same website that you found Willie. So you can actually register for all of the films in the film series if you go to that website. Don't forget to answer the trivia questions for an opportunity to win a $25 gift card. We would be happy to mail those to you. So as we conclude, I just want to say thank you once again. This has been a fantastic panel. If you have a desire to support the work of Communities First, we are celebrating our 10-year anniversary with our Celebrate Elevate campaign, where we're asking people to give $10 a month for the next 10 months. So you can learn more about our organization at communitiesfirstinc.org. And then also if you go to communitiesfirstinc.org/update/celebrate elevate, you can also participate in that campaign. It's been a fantastic discussion. I don't think that I'm forgetting anything. And I just, again, want to say a heartfelt thanks to each of you for participating and for sharing the story of Willie and sharing your own stories. Have an enjoyable rest of your day.
Bye.